Welcome to Lesson 08, where we stop writing bash that breaks and start writing bash that scales. Here's the truth. 80% of the shell you'll ever write comes down to 4 ideas. Variables with proper quoting, control flow, reusable functions, and robust error handling. The gap between junior bash and senior bash is tiny in lines of code, but massive in reliability. Get these 4 right, and the script you write today still runs in 5 years on a different distro with weird inputs. Let's start with the foundation, variables and quoting. Assignment in bash is unforgiving. No spaces around the equal sign, ever. But the real killer is what happens when you forget to quote an expansion. Write file on a path with spaces, and bash hands 3 arguments instead of 1. Quote it as a file, and the spaces are preserved. The rule is non-negotiable. Always double quote your expansions, and always use banan, never bear arna. That single habit eliminates roughly 90% of bash bugs you'll ever see in production. Quoting keeps a single line safe. Structure keeps the whole script safe. Every production bash script follows the same 5 sections in the same order: shebang, safety, variables, functions, and main. The interpreter line at the top, strict mode right after, configuration and paths up top. Reusable name blocks in the middle, and the actual work at the bottom. The rule is simple. Any script over 20 lines deserves all 5. Skip none, and anyone reading your code 6 months from now will know exactly where the real work starts. With structure in place, let's talk control flow. Bash gives you 4 primitives, and each has a senior bash form you should default to. Use double brackets for tests. They handle empty variables and don't need as much quoting gymnastics as single brackets. Let globs drive your for loops instead of parsing ls. And when you read a file line by line, the only safe incantation is, while ifs shred rline, that empty ifs preserves white space, and r stops backslashes from being eaten. Case beats 5 nested ifs every time. Quote your variables, and these patterns will outlive the server they run on. Once your scripts grow past 100 lines, copy-paste stops scaling. That's where functions earn their keep. 3 rules to internalize. Declare variables local so they don't leak into the global scope. Return status through the exit code, and return data through statout. Mix those up, and you'll spend an afternoon debugging why if my func always passes. And once a function is genuinely useful, lift it into lib and source it. That's how one well-written log ends up powering every script on the box. Now for the 4 lines that separate junior bash from senior bash. Set exits on any failure. You catches your typos by erroring on undefined variables. And pipefail means a broken pipe doesn't get silently swallowed when grep finds nothing mid-pipeline. Tighten ifs to new lines and tabs so word splitting stops mangling file names with spaces. Then add a trap cleanup exit. Your lock file gets removed whether the script succeeds, fails, or gets Ctrl-C'd. And when something does go wrong, bash traces every command. Memorize this incantation. Here's everything bolted together. 25 lines doing the work of 200. Notice the structure: strict mode at the top, read-only variables declared once, 3 tiny functions for logging and exits, then a main block that traps cleanup, checks the lock file, dumps the database, and reports the size. Every line earns its place. Nothing is incidental, nothing is decorative, and this is the template you'll be adapting 5 years from now. So why are we still writing bash in 2026 instead of reaching for Python? 3 reasons. First, bash is everywhere. Every Docker image, every system unit, every cloud in its script assumes it. Python needs installs, versions, virtual envs. Bash needs nothing. Second, bash composes Linux tools natively. grep, awk, cd, jq through pipes is genuinely more expressive than wrapping the same tools in subprocess calls. And third, bash's limits are honest signals. Past 100 lines, or when you need real JSON or HTTP, that's Python's job. The skill isn't avoiding bash. It's knowing exactly when to leave. Knowing when to use bash is half the battle. The other half is having the right patterns at your fingertips. Here are the 12 you'll reach for daily. Start every script with set UUO pipefail. Quote your defaults with the colon dash. Use the colon question mark to demand required arguments. Trap exit for cleanup so half-written temp files don't litter production. Print this page, pin it above your monitor, and in a month you won't need it. These dozen lines cover 90% of real shell work. Patterns stick when your fingers type them, not when your eyes read them. So here are 3 drills, 30 to 45 minutes total. Drill 1. Take a deliberately broken 5-line script and harden it. Feel the gap between fragile and robust. Drill 2. Write a cleanup function with trap on exit, then try to break it with Ctrl+C in a forced failure. Watch it clean up anyway. Drill 3. Build a sourceable logging library that survives being loaded twice. Do all 3 today, and the patterns become reflex. Before you go drill, lock these 5 mistakes into memory. Every one of them has burned a real production system. Unquoted variables turn a file name with spaces into 2 arguments, or worse, into an injection. Skipping set, UO pipefail, lets a failed copy march straight into a destructive remove. Single brackets bite you on quoting and operators. A bare while red mangles white space and backslashes silently. And defining functions after you call them just fails outright. Quote everything, set the flags, use double brackets, set IFs shoring with R, and define before you call. That's the senior bash checklist. And that's bash mastered, variables and quoting, control flow, functions and sourcing, and the safety flags that keep a script honest. Stage 1 of advanced is done. Next up is the text processing trinity, grep, scd, and awk. The tools you'll reach for every time you touch a log file, a config, or any stream of text. Lesson 9 is waiting. See you there.